Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the MBOM podcast. Just before we dive into today's episode, I just wanted to give you all a quick reminder that this is going to be one of the last episodes for season 2 of MBOM. I've got this episode today with an awesome guest, Chanelle Neilson, and then next week we're doing a Q&A episode. So if you have a burning question that you really want an answer to, send it to me before next week at info@mbomyoga.com. Otherwise, I'll be answering a couple other questions that I've received from people that I've met with one-on-one and who've emailed into the show to ask things. And then after that, there'll be a little bit of a recap and we'll be on season break for a couple of months during the summer. And so during that time, what you can expect is fairly regular emails, so either bi-weekly or monthly, just depending on what's going on. I'm certainly not going to spam your inbox if there's not much going on. There'll be regular blog posts coming up on the website at www.mbomyoga.com. And then I've got one other thing in the works that's not quite ready, so I'm not going to tell you about it right now, but you can stay tuned for that. And the best way to be the first person to know is to join the newsletter, so you can find that at www.mbomyoga.com/newsletter. So if you're really keen to hear what's new and exciting and stay up to date with MBOM, I would highly recommend joining the newsletter, and that way you can stay within the community while we're on season break. So today's episode is with guest Chanelle Neilson, and Chanelle is joining me from Southern California. She is a yoga teacher and a mother to 5 children. And Chanelle is also a podcast host. She recently launched a podcast. That's how we got connected. And I thought that she would make a really good guest for MBOM, even though what she does in the yoga world is a little bit unique to a lot of the other guests that I talk with. She's a part-time yoga teacher. Her family and being a mother is very much her priority, or you could say her full-time job. And yoga is something that is on the side for her. It's something that she makes sure works with her family, her schedule, but something that she's also passionate about. And so this episode's a little bit unique in that we talk about how she's created her business to really work around her life. And something that I really love about this is that I think a lot of times as yoga teachers, we think that, okay, we have to say yes to every opportunity. And I think in some regards that is true. But then there's also coming into it and being like, I have all these other things going on, and how can I create my career around this? And I think Chanelle has done a great job of building a business, at one point running a yoga studio. Now she runs classes outside, and she shares how she's done all of that super successfully. So without further ado, here's Chanelle. I am very excited to be joined by Chanelle Neilson today. Chanelle, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and you are a fellow podcast host, which is pretty cool. You host a podcast on all things moms. Is that right?
That's right. So it's fun to be on this end of the podcast. This is new for me.
Yeah, and when I first saw your podcast, I don't think I would have guessed that you also have a yoga background. So it's really cool that we were able to connect and that we're here to talk about how you balance being a mom with being a yoga teacher.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Amazing. So I was thinking a good place to start would be to back up a little bit and to talk about how you first got into yoga and kind of where that started for you.
Sure. So I kind of accidentally came to yoga. I started in college. I took a water aerobics class, and my teacher that semester needed a teacher's aide for her aerobics class the next semester. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I had never done it before. And she was an older professor. And so she actually wanted her aides to teach her classes. And so I started teaching aerobics, and I loved it, and I got certified and went on to teach. And I did that for several years, teaching at different gyms and in college. And then after I had my first 2 kids, I took a little break and came back to the gym, and I was hired on at 24 Hour Fitness. And the way it works, I don't know if you're familiar with kind of the gym scene. it's just a group exercise certification. So I was certified to teach group exercise. So they hired me on, and then they just put you in whatever classes open. So the classes that happened to be open were senior aerobics and senior mind and body. And I said, senior aerobics, great. I know how to do that. But what's this senior mind and body? And they said, well, it's yoga. And I thought, okay, well, I've seen yoga before, but I really had no idea what yoga was or how to teach it or anything. And I remember it was a half an hour class, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to fill a half hour of stretching? Like, it was very foreign to me. Mm-hmm. And so I just learned as I went and kind of picked it up and then fell in love with it. And so that was really where I started. And I didn't plan on being a yoga instructor at all. It kind of found me.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I love that you came from a background of doing all this fitness stuff, and it's like stretching. We do that for like 5 minutes at the end of class. We don't do a whole class on that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh my gosh, a whole half an hour? Because yeah, exactly. We did 5 minutes. If we had the time, we hurried and fit that in at the end, and it was definitely not the focus. And the whole idea of the breath in yoga and the mind part of the mind body was really foreign to me. I had never had any experience with that.
Yeah. And so did you kind of immediately take a liking to it, or did it kind of grow on you over the years?
I actually didn't like it very much at first because I was all about burning calories and working hard and, building up a sweat. And so to go so slowly was really a challenge for me because I felt like it wasn't an effective use of my time. I wanted to use my time well and get those calories burned. And so it was definitely a mental shift to kind of learn to let go and to learn to work with my body instead of in aerobics, you're kind of tuning out, zoning out. You count and you think of the music, but you don't exactly think of what your body's doing. So it was definitely a mental shift that I had to grow accustomed to.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that as well because I came from a gym background as well. And I remember when I first started doing yoga, I was doing a class like once a week with my mom, and all these poses that were supposed to be relaxing, like the teacher would be like, relax your glutes. And I was like, no, I'm going to clench my glutes because, this is like my exercise for the day. I'm a busy college student. I'm like, no, I have to like get some work in. And now I come from a whole different perspective with it. So it's really interesting to see how that can shift.
Yeah.
And so I guess you kind of like started out teaching right away, but at what point did you fully transition into like teaching yoga?
So that's a good question because I was teaching yoga, but I didn't really know yoga. And so for me, it was kind of gradual because I was teaching, maybe some of them were yoga poses, but I didn't get the whole concept of mind and body, what that even meant of, putting the two together. And so we would do stretches and they were yoga stretches and yoga poses, but I didn't get the deeper understanding of yoga for probably a year or two after I had been teaching. But what I did see pretty early on, because I was working with seniors, and this group of ladies that worked out at 24 Hour Fitness, they were quite a bit older. I mean, probably the youngest people in my class were late 60s. And then I had even a few women in their late 80s that would come. And yeah, they were awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They were really fit and really great. But what I noticed is the ones that were staying, because it was back to back. So we do an hour of aerobics and then people could leave or come, it was a separate class. And then we had a half hour of mind and body. And I really started to put two and two together. The people that were staying or just coming for the mind and body, they were nicer. They were smiling more. They were definitely, they were able to sit on the ground and get up again at 80 years old. They were able to turn their head, and look behind their shoulder when they were driving. And all these things, this mobility that we kind of lose as we age, they had it still. And so that kind of was a light bulb moment for me, because I realized, this isn't just about temporary and looking good and burning calories. This is about life and moving and staying healthy in your soul rather than just, looking good in a swimsuit. So it's a whole different idea and a whole different concept. And the seniors kind of helped me to see that.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of thinking about like your long-term health, which is really, mobility is key to enjoying your life past the age of like 60 or 70. Even in your 50s, if you're not taking care of yourself, mobility can really go out the window.
Definitely. Yeah. You see people at that age where sometimes it's hard to get in and out of a chair, or if the couch is too low. And so, when we're younger, maybe we don't think about that as much, but it's the things that we do when we're younger that are going to really help us as we age, because we're all going that direction. We're all aging. And so we can really lay the foundation for a healthy, longer life.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And so you have 5 kids right now. You said you had 2 at the point where you were teaching, where you started teaching?
When I started at the senior classes, yeah.
Okay, great. And then as you transitioned into teaching more and more yoga, I guess you were probably in between pregnancy and having babies and then having toddlers.
Exactly. Yes. So my yoga journey has been really an interesting one, because it has been all kind of based around my kids and what ages they were at, and if I was able to leave them or not, and all those kind of things. So I started when my son was 6 months. And actually the reason why I left 24-Hour Fitness and I left that job is because my son started biting at the daycare when he was a toddler, at the 24-Hour Fitness daycare. And so he got banned from daycare. And so that was the end of that. And then, I had another baby and took a little while before I went back.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Oh, that's too bad about your son.
Yes, I know. He doesn't bite now. He's 12. He's a good boy.
Yeah. I feel like toddlers just go through phases.
They do.
And so you have continued to do yoga kind of on and off, teaching as a side gig while being a mom. And I'd really love to dig into kind of like what life is like as a mom teaching yoga and being a yoga teacher and being a mom. Can you tell me a little bit about how you balance that and what your career has been like with that?
Yeah. So for me, if you ask me what my career is, I would say my career as a mom. I'm a mom first. And that is, I grew up with a stay-at-home mom, and that's always what I wanted to be. I graduated with a 4-year bachelor's degree, and I studied business, but I wanted to stay home with my kids when they were young. And so that has always been the plan. And, then when I had kids, I loved being with them, but it was really nice for me, and yoga has really been this awesome way to stay at home, because it's not a 40-hour work week. And so it allowed me to get out and do something I loved and was passionate about, and meet people and all these wonderful things while still primarily being a mom. And so I've done that in a few different ways. So when my kids were little and none of them were in school, it worked out for me well to teach at the gym, because I was only on my own schedule. But after they started school, that got a little harder, because something you don't think about with school kids, they're only in school 180 days of the year. So pretty much half the year you're having to, be home with them. And that's 180 school days. That doesn't include the days that they get sick or they have field trips they want you to go on and all those things. And so as I've kind of structured my life, the number one thing for me is flexibility. That is so important, because especially with 5 kids, someone always needs something, they forget a folder at school or someone's sick or different things. And so flexibility has been so important to me. So what I ended up doing, after our first 4 were born. And I was telling you earlier, we have a big gap between number 4 and number 5. So we actually had all the kids in school at one point before our 5th baby was born. But anyway, after we had 4 kids and the older 2 were in school and the younger 2 were home with me. And I had a friend who had a Kung Fu studio, and he only was using this Kung Fu. He teaches, school age kids and some adults, but after school. And so the whole day, morning and afternoon, he didn't use this studio at all. And so he offered for me to come in and basically have my own yoga studio in this shared space.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, it worked out great. I didn't have a huge budget to start this business, but it worked out great because I was able to set my own schedule, hire my own teachers, and, have this business that could revolve around my kids. And one of the other things I did at this studio to make it really mom friendly is we converted the back into a babysitting area. So other moms could come and bring their kids, and we had babysitting available, and I'd let the babysitters, they would babysit for me, and then they'd get, a free yoga so they could come to any classes they wanted. And so that worked out really well. And that helped me to balance. That's one of the things that, having my own business has really helped me to get that balance because it allows me to have that flexibility. So that's very helpful.
Yeah. I think that that's amazing. I was thinking about like something that I talk to people a lot on the podcast about is, if you're going to be, I think that all yoga teachers should frame themselves as yoga entrepreneurs, because really you work for yourself and you create, you choose what studios you're going to work at.
Yes.
But then when you're a newer teacher, there's kind of this like say yes mentality. So it's, say yes whenever you have the opportunity to get experience. So say yes to 6 a.m. classes, say yes to like the latest class possible at the studio. And I feel like that piece becomes really challenging when your priorities are your children and you've got 4 children who are all different ages. And, 6 a.m. is probably very, very difficult when you've got children of all different ages for you to not be there.
Yeah, for sure. And so for me, it was not, I guess I knew going in, like, this is my priority. My priority is my family. And so where I can fit my passion, which is yoga, around my family, then to that extent, it's going to work. And so that has always been kind of my guiding force, but you're right. That means that sometimes I have to say no. In fact, just the other day, a class came up. Someone was looking for a mom and baby yoga instructor, and I have a baby, and I thought, oh, that'd be fun. But no, it wouldn't, because like I was saying, my other kids are out of school, and I need to be there for them. And so, I really have to schedule what's going to work for my family, and that's all that I can schedule.
Yeah. I really like the mentality of figuring out kind of what your priority is. I think that, I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't, I guess, exactly know the transition that happens when you have a baby, but I think that even moms who are like dead set on, I'm going back to work right away. I think something shifts a little bit when you have a baby. And
yes,
it seems like the overwhelming love it seems incredible.
Yeah. Even now, so, right now, my baby's 8 months old, and I teach at the park, and I don't bring him. I have a longtime family friend that watches him, and it's for, it's a couple hours a week. It's not a lot that I'm leaving him right now. But I still it just tugs at your heart, to leave your baby, especially if he cries. And I think, like you were saying, it's a thing that you don't really understand until you have that baby. And because it seems like, okay, you could leave your baby for an hour. What's the big deal? But when you're leaving your baby, it's just hard. It's just that instinct and, that connection that you have. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting I think that it's really important for people to look at their lives and be really honest about, what you want, what's important to you, what's going to work for you. I think a lot of times there's people and, probably myself included at times where it's like, we're kind of saying, I should be doing this. I should be doing, that thing. I should do this to get to this place. But I love how you've looked at your life and been like, my priority is my kids, but I'm also passionate about yoga. How can I make my passion fit in to my life and to help me be a better mom as opposed to taking away from me being a good mom? And starting a yoga studio where you have a babysitting offering is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, that worked out really well for a little while. I'll go ahead and tell you kind of the next step of my journey, which was when my boys got a little older, they got so tired of being at that yoga studio. They were so over it. And my son, who is 9 now, he was an older, like a preschooler at the time. And he really started acting out, and he was too young to tell me like, Mom, I don't want to be at this yoga studio, but it was really apparent. And so I sold the yoga studio to one of the instructors that was working there. It sold my portion. Of course, the building itself wasn't mine, but, anyway, sold the business, and then went, a few years where I was just working as a volunteer. And that's another thing I wanted to be sure to talk about is as a mom, or as you have these transitions in life, it's so helpful to keep your skills up by volunteering. And so a lot of times what I will do, I volunteer for church groups, or Girl Scouts have asked me before, but the main thing where I volunteer is in my kids' schools. And I go there and I always talk to their teacher and say, hey, for PE, if you're interested, I'd love to come in and teach yoga. And they are all about that. They love that. It's something different. The kids get excited, and it's really great because my own kids don't want to do yoga at home with me, but they get so excited when I come to teach yoga at their school. They come up on the stage with me. They like to demonstrate their crow pose and their handstand and all their cool, impressive poses in front of their friends. So that's been a really fun thing.
I love the mentality of children when it's like, it's not cool to do yoga with mom at home, but when mom comes to the school to do yoga, it's cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like, I don't know you very well, obviously, but it seems like you've done a lot of introspection in terms of your journey, like looking at, okay, like this is not best for my child now, which means it's not best for me in my career. Okay, I'm going to, close that chapter and I'm going to open a new one. Does that kind of sound right?
Yeah, it's definitely how I try to live my life. I like the phrase deliberate motherhood, or just deliberate life. Making choices. It's so easy to just kind of let life carry you away, or get these opportunities and we say, oh, that's a good opportunity. I should do it. Like you were saying earlier, I should do this, without really taking that time to evaluate. Does this line up with my most important priorities? Is this what I value the most? There's a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and that's kind of what it's about, is making the most important thing the most important thing. Stephen Covey talks about that too. And that's kind of what I've tried to do. And so even though it would be very easy for me to get carried away, like one thing I don't ever do, very rarely, I hardly ever teach classes at night because my family's home at night. My husband works during the day. He's home at night. The kids are home from school, and, we've got school activities. And so that's something that I've said, no, this is the time that I'm going to carve out for my family, when it would be really easy because opportunities do come up all the time to teach in the evening. And so it has been a conscious choice for me to decide what's most important and what time I'm going to devote to my family and what time I'm going to devote to other things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have some like boundaries set for yourself around your career. So it's, probably like early mornings are a no-go, and then like late at night does not work. Is that kind of how that works?
That is. And then another thing is, I really have wanted to work while my kids are in school when I have that free time when they're at school. And then when they're at home, I want to be home with them. And so another way that I did that is, I went to the school district and I said, I would love to teach yoga. And my thought was to teach the kids and be kind of a traveling yoga teacher and go to all the different schools. Well, it didn't exactly work out like that, but I did get hired on by the school district, and they have a thing called the Parent Academy in our district, and they opened up different classrooms in the schools in the school district and would let the parents come in for free. So the school district paid me. The parents got to come for free. There was babysitting for the parents, and I only worked when my kids were in school. And so it was an ideal job. And that's been a lesson for me, with everything I've done, is that the perfect job for a mom kind of doesn't exist. And so you have to go out and make it. And I've had these amazing opportunities and these things work out because I've gone out there and said, okay, this is, I want a job that fits in this little parameters, and I've been able to find it. So I've been really blessed with that and been able to do my own business, setting my own hours. And even the thing with the school district, I was a consultant for the school district and a contracted employee, which worked out really well for me.
Yeah, I think you've touched on something really important there. I think that like creating a life like you've created, I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's great that you've done that, but like, I can't do that. Like that wouldn't work for me. Like I'm not able to do that. Do you have any pieces of advice for somebody who maybe has that mentality as to how you can kind of just like go for it and create this type of career that really excites you and that works with your schedule?
That's a really good question. I think that the first thing is knowing what you want. And I think that is really a thing where a lot of us get hung up because we kind of have an idea, but we don't exactly know what we want. And then if something comes up and it sounds kind of good, we jump in without really evaluating if it matches up perfectly. And so I think that goes back to your values and knowing kind of what your priorities are. But the other thing for me is that it never hurts to ask. There was not a job opening that they posted. Oh, yoga teacher wanted at the school district. No, I just went in. I had to kind of do my research and find out who the right person to talk to was. It took a little while. I had to go make a proposal. And I had a few false starts too. I had, some failures. I started off with the principal of my kids' elementary school. And she said she was interested and we were going to go through the PTA and all this, stuff. And it didn't happen. But I didn't give up because I thought that would just be perfect if I could teach through the school district. And so I went to the actual district office and went that route, and then it worked out. And then, I'll tell you, I actually, after I had our youngest baby, I was going to go back as soon as I had him, and the district didn't hire me back on, but I had all these people that had come to my classes for free and wanted to still keep doing yoga. And I had a good following here in town. And so I just went on and created my next new thing, which is what I do now. I teach yoga at the park, and I have a donation-based yoga class. Anyone can come, and people pay what they want to pay. And it's actually much more lucrative for me than it was getting paid by the school district. And they paid pretty well, but because I have a good amount of people that come and they're generous, wonderful yoga people, it has worked out, and I definitely set my own schedule. And so, yeah, that was a long answer to your question, but that's kind of my answer is that if it doesn't exist, know what you want, and then don't be afraid to go after it.
Yeah. I think you touched on so many important things there, like getting really clear on what you want. It made me think about kind of not yoga related, but my first corporate job out of college, and really not knowing what I wanted and being really desperate for money, and just taking the first thing that kind of, landed on my plate in my lap, and, just being like, okay, I guess I'll just go for it. And then ending up not really like loving that job. And I think that was a lesson for me, being like, get clear on what you want and then go for that and create the opportunities for yourself if that opportunity doesn't exist. And know that you might stumble and fall along the way, but if you just keep like pushing towards that direction that you want to go, you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also being open to changes along the way. So maybe we think, definitely we have our values and those don't change. And for me, that's, family. I value my family. I know I want to spend time with them, but I never thought I would be teaching yoga at the park. Like I had this yoga studio and I had this vision of kind of what a yoga teacher looks like. And it sort of sounds, I don't know what the word is, but Mickey Mouse, it's just some yoga teacher at the park. But really, it's awesome. Like I love being outside in nature. I live in Southern California, and so it's sunny, most of the time, and we're in this beautiful weather and the birds fly by, and it has ended up to be a great thing. But even though it's not exactly what I had envisioned or what I would have pictured my yoga teaching journey looking like.
Yeah, that's a great point, is being open to change and just, taking it as it comes. It's really cool that you've created the opportunity of teaching outside, even though, you didn't picture that like 5 years ago for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned how you created a bit of a following in your community. Is that something that you've kind of like cultivated in just sort of an organic way as you've been teaching, or have you, had people sign up for a newsletter? Like, I guess my question is kind of, how do you market yourself? How have you found these people and kept them engaged and that sort of thing?
I was really lucky, with teaching for the school district because they put up flyers and they send emails to everyone in the district and told them about my yoga class. And so I had a lot of people come to me from the district. And then when I stopped teaching at the district, they still stayed on with me. And those are a lot of the people who are with me working, doing yoga at the park. So in that way, I didn't have to do much to get this following except have, a good class. And one thing that I would say that has contributed to that is, I really try to listen to the people in my classes and to find out, why are you coming to yoga? First of all, because people are coming for different reasons. And I want to make sure in my classes that I am hitting all of those reasons. Some people are coming for a workout. They want to strengthen. Some people, just want a break and they want the really relaxing poses and those kind of things. And so I really try to, at the beginning of class, kind of get a feel for what people are looking for and really teach to that and make sure that they're getting what they need from each class. The other way that I've marketed is, and I'm pretty specific. Anyone can come to my classes, but I market to moms. My podcast is for moms that I do right now. My yoga is marketed to moms. And there's a big moms face group page that I'm on in my area. And it has, a couple thousand people just in the smallish town where we live. And so I post on there, I've got this donation yoga class, whoever wants to come. And then when people say they're interested, I add them to my own Facebook page, and that's where I do all my updates and everything. So that has grown by quite a bit, and then new people come all the time. I've also used meetup.com to just get new interest and have new people. And so, yeah, those are a few of the ways. And word of mouth has by far been the most valuable, because when people find a class that they like, they talk about it, they share about it. I'll have people post on Facebook all the time, I went to a great yoga class today, and they'll tag me, and then their friends will say, I want to know more. And so people come that way too.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that it's easy to get caught up in how there's like one path or like maybe two paths to market yourself. And I think that that's a really great example of how when you're in a community, you can look at, who is liking my classes? What are they saying? What do they need from me? Okay, can I provide that as a yoga instructor? And then just putting it out to your network and say, I'm teaching. Okay, come over to my Facebook page. I've invited you. And like utilizing the things that are in your community, like that moms group. I love that.
Yeah, that's worked out well for me. And it's been so fun because they are people in my same stage of life. And so I've made a lot of great friends, that we're there doing yoga and that, but they're also friends that I see around town or, at the school or things like that. So that makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think that yoga is so much about community. I mean, that's something that so many people have told me, like, I went to yoga because I wanted to do something physical and I ended up meeting really cool people. And it was like this place that I hung out at all the time, which is why I became a teacher. And I think that it's really cool to be able to cultivate that as a teacher, to have people who you can hang out with and who resonate with you, who you can have like great deep conversations with. It's like inspiring as a person and then also so inspiring for your career.
Yeah. And as a teacher, it's a great feeling to bring people together that way because I love it. It can be isolating as a mom, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom and you've got young kids and you feel like all I'm doing all day is, feeding and changing and no one to talk to all day. And so it's wonderful to be able to come together. And then it's awesome for me to see, people meet each other when class is over and stay and linger and talk. And that's another nice thing for us being at the park because the space, no one else needs to use the space. No one's, coming in for the next class. And so if people want to stay and hang out, then they do that and they get to know each other. And like you said, it becomes this community. And that's a really fun thing to know that you're a part of that, of bringing people together.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said for bringing like people who are in the same stage of life together. Like I know I have a really good friend who just had her first baby and she's kind of like the first person in my group of friends to have a baby. And obviously I listen to her, I hear anything that she has to say, but she's just like, the things that she's going through in the first 3 months of her baby's life are so different from my life.
Yes.
Holy man, you have this going on. You had a baby poop all over you today. Wow. I don't even know what that's like. I've never had anyone poop on me.
Oh, you will someday.
I feel like, especially when you're a new mom and if you're at home and it's I feel like it must be really nice to know that you're going through the same things as everyone else. And I felt that way, as a first year in college. It's you meet all these other people who are just as uncertain about what they want out of their life and just as scared about going to classes that are 7 times the size of what you're used to in high school and that sort of thing. I think anytime you can bring people together who are in the same life stage, it's really nice to know that you're not alone with whatever you're going through. Yeah,
I think that is really helpful. And so, that's kind of why I've geared everything towards moms. And because it's fun for me, it's fun for me to meet all these other moms. I will say I had a really cute lady. She called herself the old lady of the bunch that came in from Meetup. And she is, in a different stage of life, but that has been fun too. To see this older woman who is, really kind and wonderful and fits in with the group really well. And to kind of get a vision for, okay, she can hang out with us even though she's in this different stage of life. So I think it's both. It's wonderful to have people, that you can relate to. And it's also wonderful to have people in different life stages that you can learn from. And so, just the whole community aspect of yoga and bringing all these people together is a whole added bonus, besides what we do on the mat. That friendship and that community is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And so if somebody out there is listening and they're yes, I'm a mom, I'm a yoga teacher, I want to, be doing the same thing that Chanelle's doing. Do you have any tips or lessons that you've learned along the way that you could share with listeners?
Yeah, I think that I've covered most of the things that I've learned, but I will say this. Okay. When my son, so our first 4 children were born in 6 years. So it was a crazy time. It's still a crazy time because now we still have, all these kids. But anyway, for a while there, I felt like I didn't get any time to myself ever. I didn't. And having a regular yoga practice, not teaching, was something that was really important to me because, we can fit in the time. If it's our job, we make it happen. But what I found that was really kind of a game changer for me was that I needed time to do yoga on my own every day. And that also helped me as an instructor because, I was taking time for self-care and, really having my own practice. And I think that that's one thing that I would say to moms is to really do that for yourself. And so the way that I do it is I get up early before anyone else is awake. I come in my office. I put a YouTube video on my computer, and I put a sign on my door of the office, and it says meditation in progress, and no one is allowed to come in. And there is a strict consequence if they come in, because I had to train them like mom needs this time. And I don't spend an hour. I don't have that. As a mom, you don't get an hour to yourself. It would be amazing. But, sometimes all I do is 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes is sacred time. It's time that, is so important for me as a person and for me as an instructor. And sometimes I get a little longer. It just depends on the day and how early I get up and a lot of other factors. But I would say that would be my biggest advice is to not neglect your own practice. The reasons that you love yoga, you need to keep that practice to be a good instructor. You need that time for yourself. And as moms, that's something that we lose really, really quickly. If we don't actively search for that, we lose it.
Yeah. I think that that's a great piece of advice. I think it's really interesting, the parallel between sort of the experience of being a mom and a yoga teacher, and I guess like just being a yoga teacher or being a yoga teacher and something else. Cause I think that that's one of the most common things when you dive into something. It's like you start teaching yoga because you love yoga and you become so busy that you kind of lose your self-practice a little bit. It's kind of like you lose the reason why you started teaching yoga in the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to really take the time to do that. And you see that a lot of times, doctors or health professionals who, don't take the time to take care of their own health or all kinds of things. But yeah, that's an interesting oxymoron that happens.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think we've talked a lot about how like yoga has fit really nicely, your teaching has fit really nicely into your, I guess, like career as a mom or what you do as a mom. And then I'm also curious how like the practice of yoga has impacted you as a mother, because yoga is a mindfulness practice. It's a relaxation practice. Do you think that it's benefited you to be a yoga teacher and practitioner in your career as a mom?
Yes. Oh, so much. So I touched on this earlier, how, when we had the 4 kids and they were little, and when I started my home yoga practice, the reason why I started that is because I just felt stressed all the time, just all the time. And I don't think it was like an honest nervous breakdown, but a nervous breakdown. I was just like, about to lose it all the time. And I found myself I'm a pretty calm person by nature, but at that time in my life, I was not calm. I was edgy and I was frustrated. And so adding yoga to my life and intentionally trying to, be mindful and realize what was going on the mat so that I could bring it off the mat, that made all the difference for me. And it made me a happier person and definitely a better mom. And people a lot of times, even now will say to me like, "Oh, you're so calm." I get that a lot because my kids, so my oldest is a girl and then I have 4 boys, and little boys are so fun and they are so energetic. And so I think sometimes people will look at me and it's like I'm still and standing and then little boys are bouncing around, everywhere. And they'll say, "You're so calm. Like, why aren't you yelling? Why aren't you, freaking out?" when they're all over the place. But it's because of that. I can directly trace it back to my yoga practice. And it's because I am letting them be them. That's, part of my mothering philosophy too. But to realize that they are just their boys and they have energy and that's okay and that's who they are, and to not worry about what other people are thinking, to not, we have rules and I don't just let them run wild or anything, but just the energy to realize that that's part of who they are and part of this stage of life, and to accept it. And yoga has helped me do that by, helping me realize okay, this is just one of those things and it'll pass and it's okay. And we kind of go with the flow, and it's helped my relationship with them be better too, because I'm not angry. I'm not trying to change their nature. I can accept that that's who they are and they're fun and they're little boys, and I love being with them, and my sweet daughter too. She's just not quite as energetic. So that's why I'm not mentioning her as much here. But, so yoga has helped me just in my mothering, to accept and to enjoy.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like it's really cool to see how yoga has benefited you, because you've been able to create this really cool career around your passion, but then, your priority is your family and being a great mom, and how yoga has, coupled with that and helped you to be better at that as well. I think that that's really, really amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool cycle there, that yoga helps me be a better mom, and then, being a better mom, it comes back to yoga, and it all kind of goes in a circle there. So
yeah, definitely. That's really cool. And so I know your podcast is not around the business of yoga or yoga teaching, but I think that it's a really, really neat aspect of the business that you're running. So I just wanted to jump into a little bit about, what inspired you to start a podcast, and how has that been for you?
Yeah, it has been so much fun. Inspired to start a podcast is just the right way to phrase it, because I just felt like it was the next step for me and it was something that I should do. And while it doesn't focus solely on yoga, that is one of our topics, because that's one of the things that I love. We actually had, I don't know if you are familiar with Leslie Fightmaster, but she has a YouTube channel with, several, I think 250,000 or 300,000 now followers. And so she was on the show talking about yoga, and that's something that we'll do more of in the future, because I think that so many moms could benefit from yoga. When I hear people, out in public yelling at their kids, I feel like, oh, a little dose of yoga today would have done you some good.
Take a breath. It's all okay.
Yes, just breathe. Exactly. So, it just felt like kind of the next step for me in my journey. And I'm still teaching yoga, but the podcast has become this awesome thing that I've been able to kind of, put out into the world, and I feel like help other moms with that.
Yeah. I think that podcasting is one of I don't know, I think the best things I've ever done. I host 2 of them, and it's just been this amazing way to connect with people. Without podcasting, there may have been no real reason for you and I to connect, Yeah.
And I love it too, because, I'm not actually a person who likes talking on the phone very much. And I thought it's really interesting that I like podcasting, but I don't like talking on the phone. But the reason is because I don't necessarily like small talk. I don't want to just, well, how was your day? Well, how's the weather? There's a place for that. But, podcasting is so cool because you get to the heart of things that really matter. You're talking about things that are important, and you're talking about things, people's passions, and you're really learning and educating, and there's growth there. And so that's what's been so fun for me about podcasting, is meeting people and having these deep conversations and good conversations where in kind of normal everyday life, we don't do that. When we meet someone, we're talking about how cute their sweater is, or, what they ordered to drink, or just silly stuff. And so it's really nice to get beyond the surface.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think that actually I've been podcasting for so long now that most of my conversations revolve around, like a very specific topic where it's like we're diving deep into that topic. It's like I found myself the last time I went out for dinner with girlfriends that I don't see very often. It was like all this surface level talk, and of course it's nice to see them. We're having like a pretty and fairly enjoyable time. But I'm like, why on earth are we talking about this stuff? Like I don't really care about I don't really care about that.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun to talk about ideas and to really, dive deep. Like you said, it's a really fun thing. And so that is definitely one of the highlights of podcasting.
Yeah. Before I was really like into listening to podcasts too, I found that the radio was so frustrating for me because there'd be all this stuff. Like, I'm not opposed to advertisements so that businesses can make money and that sort of thing. I understand how that works from a business side, but it's like, I don't care about this stuff. Again, it's like, why is this polluting my brain? Like, it's like flipping through all the different channels until you finally find something that you want to listen to. And half the time you can't find anything. Whereas like podcasting is you find a podcast and you tune into that thing and you've chosen that thing because you're interested in that topic. And, I just feel like it's so much more engaging and enjoyable.
Yeah. And that kind of, it's like mindful consumption. You're really thinking about what you want to go in and what you want in your brain and what you want, in your mind for that day. So it's a cool thing and such, we're so lucky to live in this time when we have this available to us, It's not something that before we didn't have that option when we were growing up, just you listen to the radio and that's all there was. So it's a really cool medium.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's incredible and it's growing so much too, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners about balancing being a mom with being a yoga teacher and how you've done that successfully for yourself?
The only thing that I would add is to let go of the mom guilt. It's so easy to feel bad for whatever choice you make, whether you're working full time and leaving your kids, then you worry because you're leaving them. Or if you're staying home, you're worried that you're setting a bad example because you're not out working and showing what a woman can do and all these things. So that goes along with the whole yoga mentality of being present and saying, for me, this is the season of life I'm in. I have a baby at home. I can't teach that often. I have, only a certain amount of hours that I can work, and to be okay with that and to let all the guilt go and just really be where you are so that you can have that time with your kids, and whether that's after work or all day, however you decide to structure it, to make that decision consciously and then live it and let go of the guilt.
Yeah. I think I think guilt is kind of like a useless emotion in general. Obviously, I'm not guilt free, but I think that whenever I feel it, I'm like, oh, why do I feel this? This is such a not helpful thing for me to be experiencing. But I think on the other side of that too, I'm sure that there's some people who kind of, have times where I think you mentioned this before, but you kind of want space from your child as well. I'm sure there's guilt associated with that. Like, am I a bad mom because I don't want to spend 24/7 with my baby?
Yeah, I think people can do that. They can, start to think that when really, realize I need this time for me and that's a good thing and I'm not going to feel guilty about it, because you can use your whole, you can do it. You can say, okay, I'm going to do a half-hour yoga practice every day. But if you spend that time feeling bad that you're not somewhere else, you haven't really given yourself that mental break that you need.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important, I think, for people to remember. Amazing. So where can people go to find out more about what you're up to, your yoga teaching, your podcast, and all of that?
Well, if they're in the Southern California area, they can look me up. But other than that, my podcast is on iTunes. It's called Moms Who Know. And I also have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Moms Who Know podcast. And so those are the best ways to find me. In the future, I hope to put out some videos on YouTube that are yoga specific. So someday, that's in the works for someday. But for now, we've got the podcast, and everyone is welcome to come and check it out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Chanelle. It was really, really cool to chat with you about being a mom and being a yoga teacher.
I have had so much fun. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys, I hope that you really enjoyed that interview and that you were able to pull some tidbits of wisdom from Chanelle's story. I know I certainly did, and it really encouraged me to just go for it, because I think that a lot of the time I sit back a little bit and I'm like, okay, I'll just, see how it goes or whatnot. And she's very much a great example of being like, okay, this is what I want to do. How can I put it together in a way that it's going to work for me? So as always, you can find the show notes and links and that sort of thing up on the website at mbomyoga.com. You can join the community on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. As always, thanks so much for listening, and namaste.